Hey guys, you may know me as Ophius, but this is the Carnivore's Zone. Just wanted to make a quick one-off video today about selections in Alt Editor 2. What you're going to want to do is press Control P on your keyboard, and then nothing happens, but be not afraid. Just left click with your mouse, and you'll start to get this yellow line here that'll follow your cursor anywhere you go. If you left click again, it'll start to make this polygon that you can pretty much put around any selection that you want. And then once it gets to where you want it to be, just double click with your left mouse again and it'll fill in with the selection. Pretty much what this lets us do is fill in with textures or objects in the selection that you want instead of just the whole map or the visible field. So if you just go into like the texture fill tab and hit selection, then when you fill it, it will fill that entire selection that we had selected. This also works for objects, like I said. So if you wanted to fill a whole area with a bunch of cactus or something, you just hit selection and boom. But there are a couple caveats. One is that if you click enough times, it will crash the program. This is generally only an issue if you get really too detailed with wrapping around whatever you're doing. It's usually an issue for me if I'm really up close and I'm trying to hit like individual units or tiles or whatever. Sometimes it just happens though if you're losing track of how many clicks you have. I don't know what the limit is. I don't know if it's a hardware thing or if it's just like baked into Alt Editor 2, but pretty soon here we'll probably be hitting that limit. It doesn't happen too often. I would just avoid making these very specific selections and just stick to making broad swaths. There we go. Anyway, if we go back into Alt Editor 2, you're going to want to ignore this because it is a future video. Let's get back to a map that I want to be on. Okay. The other caveat to this whole selection thing is sometimes you can kind of get your wires crossed, and if you do that where you kind of overlap on the polygon or whatever, I don't really know what the rule is, but it will only fill in part of it, and then if you can see here, kind of just like draws into the line, which could be useful if you knew how to, wrangle it, but that's just something to be aware of. And then just another quick tip, there are a couple commands in this tab up here that relate to selections. So if, say, we wanted to select this part of this island here, but not the rest, let's go ahead and do that. Say we did what we wanted here and now we want to work on the rest of the island. What you can do is go to commands and then invert selection. Make sure it says whole map, and you can mess around with the levels, but I don't usually with this function. Just press OK and it will invert the selection. So everything that you didn't have selected before will then be selected here, and everything that you did have selected will be unselected. So let's get rid of these markers here. So we've got all this selected, but say we only wanted what's above water to be selected. So let's go here and say we wanted to get rid of this texture here. Transitive textures are going to be a little bit of an issue with this. But just when you're working on a map, usually transitives are not going to be in place, so let's just ignore them for the time being. We can see here up here that this seafloor texture is texture 004. Got it over here. So let's go to commands and then truncate selection. I'll make sure selected area is visible. But let's go to truncate selection and then find texture 004. It's actually first one in the list. I don't really know how it lists these. As far as I can tell, maybe it's like a frequency thing, like depending on how many individual units have that texture in the selected area. I think it lists them based on that, but I could be wrong. Just make sure it says whole map, and you can mess around with these levels. They're actually pretty useful in this function, but since we're just deleting this whole texture from the selection, we can just select it. Make sure you hit the arrow after you select these. If you don't hit the arrows, they won't actually be transferred over. And then if you just hit truncate, all that seafloor goes away and you're left with this landmass here, which is pretty cool. it's an imperfect solution. You can see that these beaches are still unselected, but that's where the levels come in. But I will leave you to figure that out on your own. It's not too hard. Just remember that as you're dragging your cursor along, you can see the level or the height up here where my cursor is there. So as we go along, it's changing to different numbers up there. You see it's 40 and 57 now, 0. But yeah, that is selections in Alt Editor 2 as I use them. I think there's a couple other options in the program that I'm not really familiar with. If I familiarize with myself with them, I will make another video. But as far as I'm concerned, they are negligible. Don't quote me on that though. But I hope you learned something today. If you didn't, stay tuned for the next video. I think it will teach a lot. And hope you have a good one.